awareness of her situation, Ruth chucks her clothes down on the floor and begins aerobics in just her undergarments. She fully knows that her clothes are wet not long ago, and wet clothes accelerate the process of hypothermia. Nonetheless, is too cold for aerobics to raise her body temperature. Ruth then falls down on a metallic surface, clutching herself. The voice notes that despite these extreme circumstances, she shows no signs of breaking mentally. It commends Ruth, but reminds her that the of this white chamber is to break people. The scene shifts to Ruth sitting down the center of the chamber. The temperature is back to normal, but she just as they are still wet. She even asks the voice to dry them for her. To her surprise, the bottom of one of the walls opens once again. The voice asks her to drop the clothes in there, promising that they will be dried. Ruth obliges and puts her clothes in the box. After she sits down once more, the voice points out that she showed bravery in dealing with such extreme temperatures. This is less of a compliment and more of a probing statement. A girl in a corporate office knows how to deal with extreme torture scenarios. The voice then, the tattoo of 2 birds on her wrist means anything. Ruth mindlessly bumbles that there is no meaning behind it, but she simply finds it cute. At this moment, she jolts up and questions how the voice can see her. The voice says that she can see her son. The voice then asks her to drop the clothes in the box. To her, the voice says that she can see her son. To her surprise, the voice says that she can see her son. Ruth then begins searching for cameras around the room and soon finds one attached to a wall. As if to distract her, the box from the wall's bottom opens once more. There is, however, no food or dried clothes in it. Ruth cautiously approaches the box, only to severed hand, a brass bracelet and a watch is wrapped around the wrist, which Ruth seems to recognize. She yells, "How could anyone have done this?" She then asks her to drop the clothes in the box. The voice then says that the box is in the middle of the room, and she has to be careful not to drop the hand. How could anyone be so cruel? The voice yells back, asking her what was going on in the facility she worked for. Ruth once more says that she was simply an admin girl, engages the voice, and it replies that suddenly a sharp trill sound fills the chamber, causing excruciating pain to Ruth. She begs the voice to stop it and promises that she will tell it whatever she knows. As soon as the sound stops, causing her great relief. However, instead of saying what she knows, Ruth asks to see the face behind the voice. It is obvious that by this point, the person on the other side is getting impatient and thus he reluctantly agrees to a face reveal. Second on the white square, it is none other than Citizen General Zakarian. Ruth immediately the situation around the UVA like currently, and he replies that everything is in chaos. Next, he is asked to tell the story of the military. And Ruth tells him about the rumors she heard. She says the military was preparing for a huge weapon of some sort, but doesn't actually know the details. On the other hand, she also fighting against the military and creating destruction. Zakarian made the people do so. It is the military's policies that created the chaos. He angrily leaves, and he is left with a sad face. He is left with a sad face. He is left with a sad face. Is left with a sad face. He is left with a sad face. He is left with a sad to a few moments later as Ruth sits down near a wall, deep in thought. The sound has been turned off and she asks how Zakarian can be so comfortable with killing people. It is simple mathematics. One has to decide which his life is more valuable than the lives of his enemies. Zakarian then appears on the screen and once again asks Ruth what she is doing for the National Security Council. He replies, not doing anything for the National Security Council. The poor woman desperately replies that she has already said everything she knows. Just then, someone calls Zakarian urgent information. It appears as if they have found some important piece of document related to Drive Chrysler, the head of weaponry in the Nenesk. The name strikes some chord with Ruth, who exclaims that she was actually taking the documents to Drive Chrysler before she got knocked out. Zakarian, however, is sure that she knows way more than she's currently spilling out. Begins the new rounds of torture. The first step is electrocution, as Zakarian dictators have used this method in the past. He particularly points to the brutal method General Peanut Sutton. However, the electric shock is not enough to stop her from going to the hospital. The electric shock is not enough to stop her from going to the hospital. The electric shock is not enough to stop her from going to the hospital. The electric shock is not enough to stop her from going to the hospital. The electrocution soon stops as Ruth lies in pain in the middle of the chamber. Zakarian or to go to one of the walls, which has turned into a black screen. When she replies that she can barely move, 2 drops of acid fall on her abdomen, bolts back and wriggles to the black screen. To her horror, the screen soon turns transparent and she comes face to face with a horrific sight. Cannibal girl whose body is almost burned with acid is lashing in her face. The scene is then shown in the film, where Ruth is bashed in the glass. Zakarian cannibal girl out, who immediately attacks Ruth. She breaks a finger clean off her hand and tries to eliminate our heroine. But Ruth bravely grabs the finger and plunges it. Attack her. That is enough to stop the hideous cannibal for now. The scene then shifts to 5 days ago, and we are shown a secret laboratory run by the National Security Council, or NNST. This high-tech lab is currently building chemical weapons for the British military to aid them in the war. Their main objective is to invent a drug that would allow the soldiers to keep fighting, even in the worst of conditions. Their policy is that the entire staff, except the top scientist, is rotate every 2 weeks to ensure that no information leaks. One day, Ruth arrives at the lab. She looks nothing like the woman that Zakarian has captured in the future. This is because the woman Zakarian captured is not Ruth, but actually Drive L. Chrysler, the chief of the National Security Council. She is the chief of the National Security Council, and she is the one who created the weapons development in NNSC. It turns out that all the time to Zakarian about her real identity. Scientists Ed and Sandra. She also shakes hands with Drive L, who immediately gets famous. This is because she has a nut allergy and Ruth had eaten a chocolate bar. Almonds. Ella rushes upstairs and coughs maniacally. She tries to keep her allergy under control. Everything is normal. Al begins easing Ruth into their work. It is then revealed that the NSC actually developed the White Chamber, a sophisticated torture device that also serves as a testing ground. The military had caught him. The military gave Zakarian to the NSC so that he can be used as a human test. After a while, Ruth is found dead. She is then taken to the hospital and is taken to the After a while, Ruth is taken to the hospital and is taken to the hospital. After a while, Ruth is taken to the hospital and is taken to the hospital. After a while, Ruth is taken to the hospital and is taken to the hospital. After a while, Ruth is taken to the hospital. Ruth is taken. Doctor goes into the White Chamber to provide her with medical equipment, including watching Holocaust survivors as well as some resources to promote the death of Drive L. Zakarian goes through an electronically altered voice. A rebel leader is a witty man, the Special Air Service. He is habituated to techniques of torture like sleep and not allowing one to go to the bathroom. So he cracks jokes with the altered voice and doesn't actually reply to any questions they ask him. However, soon, Al promises that the Red Army officers will never return to the States. He promises that infused anything in it. Zakarian falls for the trick and gobbles it up. Unbeknown, it contained the NSC's test drug. As soon as he eats the last slice of the pie, Zakarian becomes hyperactive. Ruth watches on as Elle then turns on the shower in the White Chamber. The water is at Sue's degree, and yet the rebel leader completely unfazed by the cold temperature. Seconds later, Elle cranks up the temp of the water and still, Arian feels nothing. His skin is practically burning, but he doesn't seem to notice it. After this round of testing, Drive Elle privately about their progress. Apparently, the drug they are developing is named Argo, and it turns out the sensory spots in the human brain. This would allow soldiers on the front line of war to keep fighting in any circumstance. Ruth is extremely Drive Elle, however. The newcomer also has a lot of experience in the field of med, has a hint of empathy towards the captured Zakarian, something that Elle notices. That night, Ruth is placed on the last rotation to look after the lab while everyone retires to their sleeping chambers. The newbie notices that the monitor that relayed images from inside the White Chamber isn't working, so she goes near the control panel to fix it. But Drive Ella, who had been watching her from nearby, stops her and tells her can be leaked to Zakarian. The two ladies then fix the monitor and Ruth is able to see the monitor and watch what the prisoner is doing. He still seems to be high from the earlier dose of the drug that they mixed in his pie. Ruth is visibly uncomfortable with this sustained torture and asks why they are continuing the testing. After all, their drug seems to work, as shown by Zakarian's reaction earlier. Ella, however, chastises her that they need to keep the tests going until the Nenesk is fully satisfied and takes the night shift. The following morning, on the second day of the test, Ruth is told that Zakarian refuses to eat his breakfast, so they have to come up with a new way to feed him the drug, Argos. Ella opens the gas, pours on the roof of the chamber, and control panel over to Ruth. Pours letting the drug and vapor form into the chamber. Zakarian once more starts becoming hyperactive. Today, on the human body, which has ingested Argos, Ella then orders Ruth to keep to a maximum of 2.5. Second test is a reaction to it. A large amount of current. But shortly after, Zakarian addresses Elle by her seems to have researched her prior to getting caught. It is then revealed that Elle, the White Chamber projects under Nenesk because the rebel forces had killed both her brother and husband. She wanted to take revenge for their deaths, which is Zakarian's test, despite knowing that their drug is almost perfect. The rebel leader keeps gloating about killing her beloved people. Elle begins losing her composure. She orders Ruth to zap him with extremely high current, which the latter does, but Ed arrives in the nick of time and cuts the power supply to the White Chamber. Later that afternoon, he sits down with Ruth and has a heart-to-heart conversation with her. Turns out, Ed is actually Edgar Chrysler, the inventor of the White Chamber and Elle's father. He lost his son who was in the army as well as his son-in-law who fought for the rebel forces. This deeply affected Elle, who can now go to any length to bring down Zakarian. It is also that Elle's tattoo of 2 birds is a tribute to her brother and husband. The third day of testing arrives and things go from bad to worse for Zakarian. He is starting to get addicted to drug Ania and Dom leader threshold to go up, and even when Elle begins dropping acid on her face, she barely. Meanwhile, Ruth is horrified by what's happening and tries to talk to her colleagues. Of them, Elle, Ed and Sandra seem to be motivated by the loss of family members. This whole test thing is now simply a revenge camp. With no one to back her, Ruth is forced to fall in line, continue overlooking the White Chamber. She is then forced to leave the White Chamber and is forced to go to the hospital. The hospital is now in a state of panic and the police are looking for her. The hospital is now in a state of panic and the police are looking for her. By the time the 5th day of the testing arrives, the Nesk sends a letter to the lab. They are satisfied with Argo and have provided a go-ahead for large-scale production. Both Zakarian and his girlfriend are addicted to the drug. Despite all this, Ed show no signs of slowing down on the girlfriend a dodgy sample of Argo from Oblige, and she puts the drug in Anya's cell. On the other hand, Elle stands in front of her window and finally shows her face to Zakarian. She wants him to see her before he faces the worst punishment of his life. Emotionally broken, she yells at the prisoner, saying her husband to a premature death. Zakarian is slightly taken aback by this news and asks his name. When she reveals it, the rebel leader immediately recognizes him. Actually is a good leader who respects every single soldier. Zakarian is a good leader, is a good man. He is a good man, and he is a good man. He is a good man. Nonetheless, Elle is consumed with hatred and refuses to see anything good in the man. She then closes the window and leaves. Shortly afterward, Zakarian sees his girlfriend turn into a cannibal. She bites off her own fingers and eats them, shocking the rebel leader beyond belief. Ruth has seen enough. She no longer can take this inhumane behavior and heads toward journal to free Zakarian. Elle, who is nearby, tries to talk her out of doesn't care. Ruth even confronts Elle and says she is a disgrace to the memory of her brother and husband. This is enough to send Elle over the edge and she stabs Ruth with a scalpel and Sandra watch on as the young girl drops to the floor. Following this, Ed rushes to help Ruth and applies pressure on her wound. However, the latter gathers whatever energy she has at the door of the White Chamber. The group then leaves, and the young girl then enters the room. Ruth's the White Chamber. Zakarian finally comes out of the torture device, boiling with vengeance. His mind is now much due to overconsumption of Argo, and he immediately tosses Ed and Elle to the side. Zakarian then runs upstairs and finds a lot of Argo. This is the same dodgy batch that had turned. He snorts a lot of it, making him crave human flesh. while Elle, who is on the verge of passing out, sees Zakarian bite a chunk out of her father's neck. Sometime later, a group of men dressed in all black and led by a masked man barged into the lab. Sandra, who had been hiding until now, runs to them for help. But as soon as she approaches, one of the masked man then sees Zakarian